Welcome. I'm Phila Hoopes for Survivor's Haven, claiming our lives, sharing our strength, and I am delighted to be doing the first interview with a member of our community. I'm talking today with Noelle Imparato, artist, author, speaker, and teacher of Vipassana Buddhist meditation, speaking with us from her studio in Baltimore's historic Union Square Artists Community. Noelle, thank you for stepping up for this first interview and for your powerful, challenging, and inspiring work. It's so good to be talking with you today.
The pleasure is mine.
It's very exciting. So if I may just share a little bit about your background for our viewers.
Please do, yeah.
Great. So born in Brittany, France, Noelle was trained in architecture and cinema. After an international 16-year career as an Emmy-nominated film editor, scriptwriter, and documentary producer, she returned to school to earn a PhD in mythological studies with an emphasis in depth psychology from the Pacifica Graduate Institute. She developed her signature style through taking intensives at the Esalen Institute. She's now gaining an international name for her artwork, which she created over a period of 15 years while working through personal, familial, and ancestral stories, including memories of sexual abuse, while also integrating various mystical experiences, such as out-of-body experiences, near-death experiences, and Kundalini rising experiences. She's just finished writing a book about her healing process through her art, and she's now seeking a publisher. In the meantime, she's exhibiting her work and speaking at local museums. Attendees at her talks have said, one of the most powerful things about your paintings and their narrative is the incredibly subjective expression of war, history, and mythic themes. It's very courageous and inspiring. And they've called her work a beautiful and courageous expression that will no doubt lend support to those who may well find themselves in the middle of such a journey. Noelle, we met through your class Painting for Life, which you've been offering for nearly 20 years, and in which you teach the process by which you work through your traumatic and disorienting experiences. Would you tell a little bit about your early life and how it affected your adult life?
Yes, certainly. Well, I was born in Brittany, France, on the West Coast, and just at the end of World War II, in a pocket in France that was actually Nazi occupied, which means we were bombarded by the Allies. And 362 shells, exactly, my father counted, fell on our land. And after one fell on a barn and killed 7 cows and 1 bull, my mother decided that she should take her children and go into Exodus. So perhaps maybe that connects with my choosing to live in exile. And I don't know that early imprints mark you for life. But most importantly, perhaps, is I came from a family of 10 children, and we live in a big country house with a farm. So life was pretty good. But father was a traditionalist, and he dreamed of one thing and one thing only: to have a boy that would perpetuate his name on his land. But fate had it that he actually had 8 girls in a row. Then 2 boys. And I am that 8th girl. So the next day, after after I was born, when he heard he had another girl, the father exclaimed like, "Oh my God, what am I going to do with another girl?" Oh. And then the next morning, he came downstairs and he saw the gardener picking up the last litter of kitten and put them into a burlap bag, to drown them in the river. And so my father, who is like a big jokester, told the gardener, "Francois, why don't you take my daughter and put her in that bag?"
Right. Wow. Oh, what a shocking thing.
I even have a painting that sort of shows that event, to kind of it marked me enough. It was, of course, it was a joke. Uh, but, a joke can drill its way
Oh,
into your
yes.
subconscious better than a truth.
Yes. Oh, my.
I am a girl and I'm not wanted was the message I interiorized. And it will take me my entire life to disidentify with that sense of not being wanted, not being enough.
Yes. And that is such a common experience to so many women that the feminine is not as desired, not as valued. And so that must have gone very deep.
Yeah, well, this is something I share with a lot of women, and so it did mark my desire or my direction in life, to do some feminist work and some activist work for justice and gender.
Of course. So, when did you come to the U.S. and how did this bear upon your adult life?
Oh, coming to the US was a major transformation because, as you mentioned, I already was in my 20s and I had already done a documentary that for campaigning for the legalization of abortion in France. But like most of young people at the time in the 60s, I wanted to go to India. But it
Mm.
turns out that the daughter, not the girlfriend I wanted to travel with, she already had gone to India. She felt like, oh, India, it's passé. And she was, very avant-garde, you might say, and even then she thought, we should go instead to visit the shamans of Peru.
Mm.
So Peru it was. We flew
Wow.
to New York. We sort of hitchhiked across country because she had some friend in Los Angeles. And then we got trapped in Los Angeles. We never made it to Peru.
Oh.
And so here I was in Los Angeles, first I had like this prejudice, that Los Angeles was nothing but some kind of nightmarish, labyrinth of freeways. But to my own surprise, I actually loved Delhi. And why? Basically because coming from my white Catholic village and traditional family, LA appeared to be like the Mecca of freedom.
Oh.
People would just go around offering you without even you asking for it, offering you like window panes. You know,
Mm-hmm.
what people from the 60s will know that what those are, but basically they are LSD. So the first time I took LSD, turned out to be a full blown out spiritual experience. I entered the sanctum of sanctum of pure being,
Mm.
where ordinary self, space, and time are no longer at play. So you might say I visited heaven, if only as a tourist.
Oh.
So after that, instead of going to mass on Sunday morning, I would drive to the beach and pop the Holy Host,
Oh my goodness.
trans-
Wow.
transforming, an ordinary day in the sun into
Mhm.
a magic trip.
Mm.
So I was walking on Rainbow Land, literally.
I can imagine. And
Yeah.
it must have changed your perception of ordinary life as
Oh,
well.
absolutely. The experience completely changed my life because by getting a glimpse at the meaning of life, it,
Mm-hmm.
I had basically found the meaning of my life.
Mm.
So my kind of latent depression during my 20s, when I felt lost and didn't know what to do or where to go, I had lots of energy, but I was just basically lost. And
Mm.
then this sort of gave me a grounding. You
Wow.
know, I felt like I had seen God. I knew what life was all about, you know, not that I was
Mm.
capable, of course, of maintaining that higher state of consciousness, but just having had a little window gave me enough
Mm-hmm.
sense of now direction.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you were also very lucky, I should say, having had that experience. Not everybody has had that experience with psychedelics.
No, and why, you know, we could elaborate on that, but I don't think we have time here.
I understand, but just that necessary caveat. So, how did you come upon meditation, and how did that affect your evolution?
Well, I was living in Los Angeles now, and I was working in Hollywood as a film editor. And one day I went to an artist event, and Shinzen Young was presenting himself. He was just a disrobed monk from Japan,
Mm-hmm.
you know, but an American man, and just was going to start a course in meditation. And
Mm.
just meeting him then was basically love at first sight. I felt like for the first time in my life, I was meeting a spiritual teacher who was really meeting the need of my Western mind.
Mm-hmm.
And so I became an assiduous student of his, and I worked with him, I trained with him, I became a facilitator, which means you kind of teach other people a little less advanced than you
Yes.
to
Mm-hmm.
start meditating. And basically, you know, encountering a tradition as old and respected as Buddhism that actually confirmed my personal experience, you know, felt somewhat of a miracle, you know, because I felt like all the Buddhist philosophy totally confirmed my experience with the psychedelics, and
Mm-hmm.
also some mystical experience I had when I was a child.
Wow.
And so knowing at both, you know, cellular and intellectual levels that my deepest inner nature is one of divine compassion and wisdom
Mm-hmm.
came as a great relief, you know, from my Catholic upbringing focus on the original sin.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure. Um, so that led to your uh, further growth, and did that affect your artistic career? When did that begin, your artistic career?
Well, at the same time that I was doing, you know, my regular work as a film editor and doing the training with Shinzen, I
Mm-hmm.
was also taking a number of workshops at SLN Institute in Big Sur, California.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, SLN was, you know, the basically what they call the granddaddy of all the self-help center.
Oh, yes, yes.
Yeah, was opened like in the 60s, early 60s, and saw people like Maslow and other very famous psychologists. So
Mm-hmm.
anyway, I took by sort of chance, I took a workshop about painting. Of course, being trained as an architect, I always loved painting. Not
Mm.
painting so much, but drawing.
Yes.
I never learned painting, but I like drawing, and I learned how to draw with training in architecture. And so I went to this painting workshop, and boy, it wasn't what I expected. It
Yeah.
was very different. You know, I was trained as very kind of a methodical, rational, you know, you have to figure out everything ahead of time and make sure everything is perfect. This was
Mm.
the opposite, you know, this was
Mm.
like West Coast for you,
Ah.
meaning, you know, you don't know what you are doing. And that was the major approach. But the don't know mind as like in Zen, you know,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
meaning you have to be extremely present in the moment and alert and aware of like, I don't know what I'm going to do in 2 minutes, but I have to know what's going on right now at this very second. And When I mean what's going on, I mean not so much what's going on around me, but what's going on within me, my emotion and how I react to it, and maybe how what I'm going to do or what I would like to do might be affected by how I think people are going to respond,
Yes.
So uh, this was a very, very different way of working than what I had done before. It was basically let go of control.
Yes. Yes.
And letting go of control is the hardest thing of all. It would be a whole lot more fun and not fun, I don't know, but it would be easier for me at least, to be thinking about, composition and color coordination and what's the meaning of this and things like that, because then you just kind of work with your head.
Yes.
But being present emotionally and allowing the images to arise as they want to arise and putting them on a piece of paper. And now, this is like a healing practice. So you're not doing butterfly and, rainbow heart.
Yes.
You are doing like a lot of vile material that was kind of hidden in your subconscious for many years, and all of a sudden this is like a safe place where all this material wants to come back up to the surface. So it takes a lot of courage to be able to dare digging that out and then exposing it on a big piece of paper for the whole world to see.
Would you be willing to share some of the pieces that you did during that time?
Yeah, actually, I could show you one of the very first painting I did when I went to that very first workshop at Esalen. Here it is. Hold on 1 second. Okay, can you see it?
Yes, I see it. Oh my goodness. Wow.
So
Intense.
this is intense, yeah. Basically, this is actually one of the very first painting I did, and it about my conception. So you see the mother and the father.
Yes. And the Nazi.
Into their nightly pleasure.
Yes.
In the background, you have, the Nazi bombings and a Nazi soldier. And then the mother gives birth to 10 children. So I started this painting with a lot of anger, because you can tell probably the energy of the painting is kind of very angry. And I was angry at my mother because basically although she's a very beautiful person and everybody who has met her loved her, but as a child during that time at the end of at the post-war, it was pretty tough. Basically we had no money, no cash whatsoever, so my mother was a little bit angry. And of course, in 16 years she gave birth to 10 children, and she breastfed each and every one of them for 6 months.
Oh my goodness.
And then she had to take care of the entire household. So she was very tight. And also because of her own upbringing, she was not a very warm and fuzzy mother. She kind of kept us at bay. And she never kissed us goodnight or embraced her or anything like this. So, there was a lot of resentment still in me, and that showed up into the painting.
I can imagine.
So, then I was pretty, for 3 days, basically, at the rhythm of 3 sessions of 2 hours every day. So that's 6 hours a day for 3 days. And then this is a salon where, the rest of the day you just don't go and have an ice cream, you just sort of stay in that in that container, and you keep like working on what you do even if you are not painting. The whole focus is into self-expression and process. So after 3 days I felt like I had much about a lot of memories, and I felt pretty much confident that I was finished. So I told our teacher, I'm finished.
Mm-hmm.
And to my surprise, she said, "Oh, how do you know you are finished?"
Oh.
The whole page was pretty covered with paint. So I felt, I'm done. But no, basically, finishing a painting in process art is a big step, because you have to question yourself, do you think you are finished because you are afraid to ruin your painting?
Oh, yeah.
Or am I finished, because I'm afraid to move into the new consciousness, or to link the light and the dark?
Mm-hmm.
So Michel, kind of the teacher, pushed me into painting some more. And after I resisted, out of basically respect for her, I decided, okay, I'm going to paint a little more. So I took the smallest brush I could find, and then I started doing the little flowers on the coat of the mother, the gray area.
Mm-hmm.
And I surprised myself. 20 minutes later, I was still painting, very carefully, very diligently, tiny little stroke with different little colors, and making beautiful tiny little flowers.
Mm-hmm.
And, I was kind of enthralled in doing it.
Yeah.
And I surprised myself that I was still wanting to do some more. And so then eventually the swastika sort of transformed into these flowers. And then when I kind of stepped back, I realized, the Madonna that I wanted to do on the next painting,
Mm-hmm.
she had found her place on this painting, because now I thought, oh, well, all these little flowers kind of transform the gray cloak into the coat or the robe of the mother. So now I kind of look at my mother no longer as this kind of a monstrous, big, sour creatrix,
Yes.
but into a great mother.
Wow. That
And
is
so,
transformation.
yeah, that was kind of a major transformation. And then I realized, all that violent anger and destructive despair and sense of being abandoned and neglected,
Mm-hmm.
those emotions I was harboring since birth, and that resurfaced in the work. Now they have transformed into a state of grace.
Wow. What an
And
experience.
yeah, now I was able to see my mother for the glorious being that she is, a mother and my mother.
Mm-hmm. Yes, the archetypal mother.
Yeah.
Wow.
So this was a pretty deep experience, and the very first experience I would call an experience of reversal.
Mm-hmm.
And it
Very
made me
powerful.
understand, how old memories and dark emotions were still impacting my life,
Mm-hmm.
and how my inner stories were still dictating my sense of self and the world.
Yes. Yes.
So right there and then, I fell in love with process art painting.
And um, so you continued with that even after you left Esalen. And can you tell a little bit more about how that developed in your life?
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I kind of left the painting all the way through. Was that okay?
Oh, that's fine. You're good.
Uh, well, yeah. After this first workshop, I continued. I went back home and I worked every day on painting as much as I could, and then I did a lot of work, and I went back to SLN a couple more times to do 2 more retreats. Those were kind of 7-day retreats.
Yes.
And so, and after that, I still continued. So I spent basically 15 years working in this manner and created about over 100 paintings.
Oh,
and so I like to share with you maybe a couple other paintings that I did.
You need to be mindful of time. Yes, please. So, and when did you start facilitating your painting for life?
I started working with other people fairly quick enough, like when after the 3rd retreat that I did, I felt like I was so passionate about the work. I wanted to share it with others. So I went into my garage. I transformed the garage into a studio. This was a big, LA garage, 2-car garage. So it was a big space. And I started giving retreats, weekend retreats, pretty quickly. And after that, everywhere I went, basically, I opened a studio in my house and invited people.
Yes. So you were creating as well as teaching through that whole period.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was good because teaching, what I do is not so much teaching per se, but it's more providing a safe space and giving the basic principle about how to approach the painting this way. And then working together. Often when I have only a few people working with me, I would paint with them, and so I would learn from working together, as much as I would teach them. So it's a very give and take.
Yes. So can you share a little bit of some of the outcomes that people have had with attending your classes?
Yeah, attending the classes. Well, people. Well, the first thing, the first step, for instance, would be people come and they have in their head a tape like I'm not an artist. I don't know how to draw. My 4th grade teacher told me I wasn't good at it. That kind of a.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's a lot of that. And so they come and basically after the first session, they realize, oh my God, I have an artist within myself. I may not be a professional painter, but I have a way to express myself. And that's very liberating and very empowering. So that's the first step. Then if people continue to work, they may go into deeper work, and then revelations can surface when you work this way, and perhaps memories of trauma that have been frozen in memories or hidden and repressed, they may surface. So I have had people, just realizing, things that they had forgotten, which was the case with me. Through the painting, I was able to bring back to memory a childhood trauma that had been buried for 50 years.
Yes, I remember you showed me one painting in particular of an experience that you had as a child, and then you felt driven to follow that up immediately with another painting.
I was trying to show you those 2 paintings.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, it's just that I have a little I'm not too equal
Oh,
here. Can you see?
there we go. Yes, there it is.
Okay. So this is the first painting where it shows the trauma of this little girl who has been picked up in a car by a stranger, and then he forced me to touch his penis. So that's the first painting, and that's the painting that allowed me to bring it back to memory, because I had completely erased it and never talked to anybody about it. And then, as I was just finished doing that painting, I felt like I had to do another one right away. And that one very much surprised me, because this is what came up.
Oh my goodness, how beautiful.
And I was wondering, what does this Hindu goddess with her infant, that looks like Krishna, what does have to do with my trauma?
Yes.
But then if you look on the bottom right corner of the painting, you see the little girl that has been thrown in the ditch and the car, So basically, that's the event there of the girl picked up in a car and the sexual assault. But now, instead of looking at it from within the car, like we saw in the previous painting, now we are looking at it as if from higher up.
Yes.
As if she had an out-of-body experience.
And being embraced by the Divine Mother.
And being embraced by the Divine Mother, exactly. So in the first painting, she's calling for Mother, and then here she has been embraced by Mother. And what was interesting about the two paintings linked together is that I mixed up an experience I had when I was 14. The sexual assault happened when I was 9-year-old. But then when I was 14-year-old, I had like a little bit of an experience watching a documentary on Sri Aurobindo's consort, The Mother. And in her life, she said Sri Aurobindo, I discovered after the fact when I was researching the painting, that Sri Aurobindo was like Krishna, appeared to her as Krishna. So somehow, unconsciously, that experience kind of appeared and got linked with the sexual assault. So I sort of took out as a lesson that basically the sexual assault perhaps had opened up a door to the spirit, and had sensitized me to the inner experience, because I could not speak about it. So there was a little bit of I was disconnected from ordinary life. And I did have an experience of an out-of-body experience shortly after that assault.
Oh my.
And so this whole thing kind of got linked, the trauma, an out-of-body experience or mystical experience, and then kind of seeing it or understanding it in a documentary about Sri Aurobindo. And all this is connected. And I think for me, the great wonderful thing about it is that it allows to see the trauma no longer as just like, oh, I'm the victim of a trauma, but more as, this is what has also helped me to become who I am,
Yes.
And I'm much more than this identity with the victim, now I'm more identified with this higher self,
Yes. And you're able to see the large scale picture of your life rather than simply focusing on the wounds of the past.
Yeah, exactly.
So is it possible for someone to use this process without being in one of your classes? And I imagine that a fair bit of support would be needed to access that level of awareness. Am I correct?
Ooh, I did it all by myself, but I cannot speak for other people. If I mean, when people come to the workshop, I always recommend that they do more work at home because, this is like anything else, you don't learn piano by taking a lesson once in a while, you have
Yes.
to practice every day. So the more you do it, the easier it becomes and the deeper you can go into it. So now the question is, if people sort of tap into some major insight that will unravel a lot of emotional triggering, basically, what to do about that? I mean, you are welcome to call me, and I could work with the person on a one-to-one basis, but I'm not a licensed therapist. So if it's not too difficult, I would say you have to do your own self-care. You can journal, and you can get body work and things like that, but you can also, for instance, there is the book The Artist Way that has been immensely popular. I think that for me was very helpful. It was Julia Cameron's book, The Artist Way.
Yes, wonderful book.
Yeah, and it gives you little exercise to do every day, and that has to do with, re-examining your life and your pattern and your habits and, your core issues and what have you. So I think that's very helpful. Now, if that's a bigger problem that needs more of basically therapy, professional therapy, then the person would have to look for a
Of
therapist if they
course.
don't have already one, or perhaps also body work of some sort. Any kind of a wellness professional techniques.
Of course. And then, did you find that meditation supported this process for you?
Oh yeah, big time. Meditation was, it has basically transformed my life. I could show you maybe another painting where that came into being. If we have time, do we have time?
We're getting very close to the end, but I think we have time for one more and then maybe talk about your artist's talk at the end.
Yeah. So this here is the painting, for instance, that I did. Also very angry. This happened when a very bad news came into our life. So it started with this big face, very angry. But then sort of already was able, because of my meditation practice, I was able to look at my emotion without all the little story that goes with it, but more as pure sensations. And so that sort of cooled me down. And when I did that, then those 2 feet appeared on the painting. And you notice they have a little eye on the sole of the foot. So that's sort of the image of the foot of the Buddha. And what they do is they break through the scene and make the scene appear like if it's just a mere paper scroll.
Yes.
So, it basically metaphorically tells you, this is just an illusion, and behind it, there is the blackness of the void of the ultimate nature of life.
Yes.
And so meditation sort of helps me to work through the emotion, to be able to take more of a distance with the dark emotions and to look at them for what they are, and not completely engulfed in them. So to be aware of what's happening emotionally.
Yes. Thank you. what a powerful message, and it is profound, profound work. Now, I know that you're going to be offering an artist's talk. You've done your book, and where can people find you, on the web or in ordinary life?
Oh, well, in ordinary life, I have my Painting for Life, it's called, workshop.
Mm-hmm.
And in terms of connecting with me, perhaps the easiest would be to go on the Facebook. I have a Facebook page.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
This public Facebook page, for instance. I'm not sure. Perhaps you can add the link for it.
Mm-hmm.
But you will find basically a lot of posts about my paintings and about the workshops. This is the setup for the workshop. And
Mm-hmm.
about the artist talk. Here is the event about the upcoming artist talk, where I will show all the 40 paintings
Mm-hmm.
in the book.
Yes.
And then, of course, the paintings, they came as need be, but then I reorganized them so that basically the 40 painting I selected represent the major milestones of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And so each painting has its own chapter, its own plot, and its own wisdom. But
yes.
together, they sort of form my memoir.
Yes. And
so that's the talk.
mm-hmm.
And and on Facebook. And if not, I have also a website on WordPress.
Mm-hmm.
And the website again has some articles and a whole, basically my collection, the whole paintings and different other activities that I did when I went back to France. And we were starting to do a youth center to teach adolescents meditation and English. And
yes. So much more of the detail of your life and your work. So, wow. Thank you so much, Noelle. This has been wonderful. And I'm so glad that you've been able to share all of this with us.
Well, thank you, Phila. This has been lovely to meet you, lovely to have you work and paint together and, open up new avenues for this work, and also for all the work that you do that I appreciate so much. The Reiki sessions that you gave me and that were life-saving.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, they are continuing to grow and develop, and we'll talk more about that. And I'll be posting on that in Survivor's Haven as it evolves. But and then you also have an event coming up, your artist's talk.
Yeah, that's the one I was mentioning.
Yes, yeah. Yes. So we'll be putting that up on
April 7. Yeah.
Page. Yes.
So you can plug maybe the Facebook event on your page.
I will indeed. Yes.
Please come. I'm always worried that the room will be emptied, but
We'll continue promoting it. So thank you so much once again, Noelle. And yes, here's to further conversations.
Okay, thank you so much, Phila.
Take care. Much love. All right.
Much love. Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.